Hello, I'm Tosca Bruno from Vijwijken, and I co-direct the Transnational NGO Initiative at the Maxwell School in Syracuse University. I am undertaking a brief conversational interview with Ramesh Singh. He is currently a visiting fellow at the Hauser Center on Non-Profit Organizations at Harvard University and was the CEO of ActionAid International, a major development NGO, for about 6 or 7 years before last summer, correct? Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for allowing us today to interview you, Ramesh. We're going to talk a little bit about this last phase of leadership of ActionAid International. For people who don't know ActionAid International, what is its nature and mission?
Well, ActionAid's mission is to eradicate poverty by working with poor and excluded people, poverty and injustices. Mm-hmm. And the nature of work is about assisting different groups of rights holders to claim their rights, to enjoy their rights, rights to food, rights to education, rights to safe and living in the face of HIV/AIDS, rights to democratic governance, rights to security in conflict and emergencies, and above all, a major focus on women's rights. So they were the sort of central themes of ActionAid's work.
I see. Is there anything specific that you would like to say about how ActionAid, it's kind of not competitive advantage, but it's significant characteristic that makes it different from some of the other major international NGOs that we are all familiar with?
Well, generally, international NGOs have lots of similarities as well. But if I had to pick a few things, a combination of things rather than one thing that separates us from other international NGOs. The first thing is we are very connected with the communities. It's very important for us to be connected with the communities. Even though we work with the partners, we are also directly connected with the community, because that's witnessing, bearing witness to poverty and injustice is a very important part of ActionAid's work and being. And if you add this together with the long-term nature of our work, we stay and remain with the communities and the issues for a longer period of time to bring lasting and sustainable change. And the third element is the fact that we work from projects which addresses immediate conditions of poverty to campaigning and advocacy which will address the causes of poverty and change policies and practices at national, local to global level. If you combine all these, there are not that many international NGO who will do all of these together and at the level that we do.
I see. Now, how did you as a person first become interested in transnational activism?
Well, I'm not sure whether I would say what I did was activism, but certainly initially it was just a job, really, working in a different country. I started my work with ActionAid in West Africa, in the Gambia, and then from then on moved to several countries. And as I was sort of moving from one country to another country, the world was also moving and becoming more globalized. And I realized that actually our communities and people we worked in the rural areas, or whether in Gambia or Ethiopia or Nepal, all had started to be influenced by the decisions made in different miles away, thousands of miles away in Brussels or Washington or New York or London. And that meant that we had to learn and we had to really ratchet up our work from local to not only national but also transnational and global. And that's when I think that's how we gradually became, if you like to call transnational activists, but certainly transnational actors and players in the work.
I see. Somewhere along that curve that happened. Yeah. So if you look back to, let's say, the last 6 months before you left ActionAid in the summer of this year, 2010, what were then and probably still are three of the core challenges that ActionAid was facing at that time, and how was it dealing with those challenges?
Well, the first was obviously leadership transition, which is recruiting my successor and doing it in a way that is robust, that attracted really good people to consider, as well as give the rest of the organization a say in what kind of next generation leader ActionAid wanted to. And I think it was done brilliantly well by the board. And we have a fantastic new chief executive, my successor, Joanna Kerr, a feminist, international NGO activist and leader. So that went very well, and that was a challenge. But obviously, I then needed to hand over to her, and the challenge after that was giving Joanna space. But in ActionAid's tradition and in our organizational cycle then was the beginning of the review of last 6 years of ActionAid's work. So an external, our accountability system requires us to do an external, independent and critical review, and that is still going on, and that's a big task, so that this will not only form the basis of being accountable to the promises that we made in the strategy and the strategy period, but also it will generate learning and basis for developing new strategies. Therefore, developing new strategy is another challenge that the organization has begun to face even as I was leaving, but certainly now, I guess. But we just happen to be also in a period of time of global economic recession, and therefore dealing with the impact of that recession, being careful about it, being innovative about it, but also managing with austerity and economy in the organization is definitely a challenge.
Was also a challenge, yeah. I would like to follow up for a moment. I'm curious about what you said about how staff were involved in the selection of your successor, and I'm asking that because it seems from the outside as if ActionAid, one of its values is democracy of decision making within the organization, as well as the way in which it is governed. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process of involving staff in selection process of your successor, broadly speaking?
Yeah. Well, first, the staff and board, actually, there was an open invitation to the boards of ActionAid members in 25 countries to send their recommendation about the attributes of the next chief executive. So that was an open invitation. The similar invitation was also extended directly to the country directors of all the 45 countries to send what kind of new chief executive would be good for the organization's next generation. And following that, obviously through the other process that involved the staff were interview process. In the interview process, in addition to the board committee of interviewers, the staff representative of two types. One was a staff representative drawn from the cross-section of the organization, international and national, including country directors, and the others obviously were the group of people who reported to the chief executive, and they separately also interviewed the last top 5 candidates.
I see. Very interesting. Thank you for that. Now, moving to how ActionAid defines effectiveness. How does it define effectiveness? How does ActionAid know when it is effective, and how do you measure that or assess that?
Yeah. ActionAid's effectiveness is obviously the delivery of the results. It is linked to the results. So it's about whether we did the right thing and the results was delivered. In a sense, it is different from efficiency, which measures mainly about how it was done. But of course, we need to measure both of them. ActionAid has a whole range of accountability and learning system by which on a regular basis we take reflective feedback from the stakeholders, and the effectiveness review happens on an annual basis of what happened during the year in country and its impact in project area as well. And that doesn't necessarily get aggregated, but that discussion happens on an annual basis. More at the international level, we collect more efficiency-based, more internal management-based, and aggregate whether the organization health is in the right direction, so that people in the front line of the work are doing the things in the right way. And the assumption was that that's the one which we need to measure more regularly. But obviously, every 2 years we would review internationally thematic progress of different themes, and every 5 years we do evaluations, and just like the ones that's happening
that
of the internationally. Of course, the countries have their own cycles of evaluations and effectiveness, as well as a more broader global international one.
Nice.
I think we have been, ActionAid has been in a process of developing a more robust monitoring and evaluation system, which we hadn't had for a while now, or needed to be revamped, which required quantitative information. I think the importance of, or rather renewed importance of quantitative information was emerging. But we've been very careful not to be drawn in and sucked into the demands of the donors or the advice of the business consultants to just go straight into without thinking. So we've been trying to take stock, do piloting in various 6 countries, look at what kind of information our partners and primary stakeholders would like to have, and then make a decision and innovate a monitoring and evaluation system that will respond to the kinds of work we are doing. So in some ways, the quantitative, the review-based, the much more localized national effectiveness measures have been in progress, but we recognize that we needed quantitative, careful, quantitative, selective, minimalist approach of measurement that can be aggregated, and that innovation process is still on.
It's still ongoing. Well, it's fascinating to hear a more in-depth explanation of that. My final question is, what leadership skills do you feel, both formal and informal skills, are crucial to being an effective leader in the type of organization that ActionAid is?
Well, I think the first of all is one needs to understand the core business, or the real core job, the core mission, because it's very difficult to lead an organization if the core business is not understood in the way that the organization want to go about. So that's the sort of first understanding of that. And secondly is to have the skills, that interpersonal skills, the ability to relate to people, because after all, leadership is about relationship, basically, which is a bit different from management, which is more about managing managing risks and constraints and resources. But a very large part of leadership is about managing relationship, and therefore it's very important to have that. Obviously, an ability to synthesize information, ability to brief and debrief very quickly, and just as importantly, ability to communicate the core message clearly are very important in all leadership. But above all, I think one must have a value, a set of value that actually is very consistent with the organization and the work we do, so that a consistency of that work and person is apparent to the rest of the organization and the team.
Well, that really is a very concise definition of leadership. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.